Hey everyone, today we have the tier list for patch 16.1, which is the first patch of set 16. And I want everyone to take out their notepad because we got a lot of stuff to cover. We put in a ton of new features into the tier list, so it is as detailed as you can possibly get. So let's just get right into this. Let's not waste too much time because we have to explain each and every one of these comps. So there's 100 champions in the game now, so as you can imagine, there are a lot more different comps to play, along with many different ways to play them. So starting off in the S tier right now, Bilgewater Misfortune, probably one of the best comps right now. A lot of the game relies around tons of econ. They changed the leveling patterns for level 8 and 9. I'll be coming out with a leveling guide really soon to kind of adjust for that. But essentially, you need econ augments in order to play Bilgewater Misfortune, Ixtal Fast 9, Arcanist Sylas, because you need to unlock Sylas in case you haven't played too much yet. The way to unlock Sylas is to sell 2-star 4 costs and a 2-star 1 cost. Mel Fast 9, you need income for that. And then lastly, we have Bard. Bard's super duper fun to play if you haven't tried him yet. You essentially have to roll before stage 2-5 to get him unlocked. In the A tier, we have Gunslinger T-Hex, Attack Damage Fast 9, Freljord Flex, Yunara Flex, Bel'Veth Slayers, Shadow Isle Kalista, GP Reroll, and 9 Void. I do have some other comps. The B and C tiers, there's going to be Bard Sion, Targon Aurelion Sol, Double Trouble Targon, and then Singe Seraphine. We'll focus mainly on the S and A tiers, and I'll introduce all the other comps. I'm going to be adding more as the days go on. If something's not completely filled out yet, it will be filled out in less than a day. And you can access all this information on bunnymuffins.lol, but let's go into how to play each and every single one of these comps. Let's start off with Bilgewater Misfortune. I just added this comp before the video, and I'll be filling this out like pretty much right after this. But essentially, this build works with Misfortune carry, paired up with some gunslingers such as Lucian and Senna. We can click into this here, into the team planner, and you're able to get a lot of different Bilgewater items when you play this comp, which is pretty nice to have. Because that way, if you don't get like super duper perfect items, you could still have something to play on your units. But through here, we have First Mate Flintlock. This one, every second during combat, gain attack damage and attack speed. Dead Man's Dagger. This one executes enemies, and you also gain attack damage and ability power. And the last one is Lucky Doubloon. On takedown, generate some gold. You don't have to play these exact items on Misfortune. In fact, we could check out the Explorer tool, type in Misfortune here, and then you could check out a bunch of other different items she can get. But typically, you want to put as many of the Bilgewater items onto her. You just need to make sure that she can critically strike. So IE is pretty important, but you will notice in the picture here, we do have Jeweled Lotus as one of the recommended augments. It makes it really nice because you don't need to build the IE and then you could build everything else on her. But as you can see here, having more and more of the Bilgewater items on her make her perform a lot better. But that also assumes you can afford to get that many of them. So it's a little biased in the data, but try to get as many onto her as possible. Going back to the regular team though, one thing you absolutely need to do is unlock Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is the legendary of this comp, and the way to unlock him is to spend 500 Silver Serpents. You get Silver Serpents by playing Bilgewater. You get some after every takedown, and you could use them to buy stuff in your shop, such as champions, upgrades, like giving more HP or AD, or some of the items that we just talked about. But once you spend 500, you don't need that many Bilgewater anymore. You just stay at 3 Bilgewater. It's going to be Nautilus, Tahm Kench, and Misfortune. And those are going to be the 3 that you're going to run. And then you just want to run good units after that. What is a good unit? Well, if you look at any of the 4 and 5 cost units, if they do anything useful, play them. So in this case, we have Lucian and Senna for Gunslinger. Pretty standard build there. You could use these items on Misfortune in the early game, like Shojin or Blue Buff plus Infinity Edge work great on Misfortune before you get all these items. And then in the front line, Swain is good for CC. He's going to be a Juggernaut and Arcanist. So you do get the Juggernaut with the Nautilus, which is pretty nice. Ornn is a Warden, and he builds artifact items for you. So that's really nice to pair up with the Nautilus because he's also a Warden. Braum, also a Warden. Warden is a 2-3-4-5, so you could splash it in a lot of different teams, go as deep as you want. And then you could also play Wukong as a Bruiser with Tahm Kench. So Fiddlesticks is just generically good. You could just play any random legendary instead of him. Literally anything works. For augments, you want to get as much econ as possible. So Advanced Loan is good because you get a lot of gold if you can build interest earlier. A Silver Spoon is nice. Like anything that gives you econ, experience, anything like that is going to be great for this comp because you need to reach the higher levels because this comp is so expensive. Look at this, 4-4 costs and 4-5 costs. When have we ever seen a comp like that before? Like, it's pretty rare, right? But luckily, I have built out a way to play the entire game for you. So I have game plans for stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 for like pretty much every single comp. And The way to play this is that you do want 3 Bilgewater early. It's not the end of the world if you don't have it. The most important thing is getting 5 during stage 3. That way you can get a lot of Silver Serpents and then hopefully get Tahm Kench as early as possible. But what you want to do is buy the Bilgewater units that are more expensive in your shop to get to 5 Bilgewater, and then buy as many Nautiluses as possible because you do want to 3-star Nautilus and 2-star your Misfortune quickly in order to get your units upgraded and snowball in the early parts of stage 4. After that, once you spend 500 Silver Serpents, you want to drop down back to 3 Bilgewater and then play the stuff we see here and use all your gold into leveling. So because you can buy units with your shop in Bilgewater shops or the black market, you're able to spend a lot more of your gold on leveling. That way you could reach level 8 pretty easily and hit like some random stuff to stabilize with. Or you could just go straight level 9 and play around the legendaries. Either or works, it depends on what your HP is like, but that's pretty much the quick and dirty way to play this comp. It's get a lot of gold, play Bilgewater, get the Silver Serpents, spend it on stuff in order to get Tahm Kench, play Tahm Kench, drop down to 3 Bilgewater, itemize Misfortune, play legendaries, whoever you 2-star as your legendary or 4 cost, put items on them also, and yeah, that should be good to go there. Also, another thing you want to do is feed Tahm Kench as much as you can because he gets super duper 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 strong whenever you do it. It makes this comp scale really, really well into the super late game. By the way, I do have like a little tip for you all. So the black market has different shop tables based on how many Bilgewater units are in there, whether you have 3, 5, or 7. If you're strictly looking for low cost Bilgewater units, refresh on 3 Bilgewater. So there's like a little refresh option that pops up sometimes, and if you need units, use that on 3 Bilgewater. If not, save it for 5 Bilgewater if you're looking for Captain's Brew or Lucky Doubloon. And then if you want really strong item refreshes, do it on 7. So kind of save your reroll if you're able to reach that next threshold pretty easily. And you could always like go in and out of your black market shop. You don't really have to use it every single turn or anything like that. So that's kind of cool. Pretty nice comp, very strong right now. Let's move on into the next one, which is Brock Fast 9. So Fast 9 obviously means you need a ton of econ to get there, but the gist of this comp is going to be playing Brock, and you get Brock from Ixtal. So collect 500 Sun Shards throughout the game. This should naturally happen as you play the comp. Ideally, you find a lose 10 in a row quest for 550 on 2-1. But if not, you can complete a bunch of the other win-lose quests or whatever they have until you get Brock unlocked. It is a little bit RNG-ish, but you never have to play Ixtal. If you get one of the unlock conditions and you're like, oh, I can't do that quest or whatever, you could always pivot out and play literally anything else because it is the start of the game. But if you get a good quest, you could go for this Brock Fast 9. Brock is pretty strong. You could run a bunch of different types of items on him. I prefer like a bruiserish build, as you see here. But the same rule applies with every other Fast 9 build. You need a lot of econ, so getting stuff like level up or whatever the new level up is called, I forget what it's called. Anything that gives XP, anything that gives a ton of gold, that's going to help a ton whenever you play this because you just need to get really, really, really big. Brock doesn't really have any traits though. He's just an Ixtal unit, but he's immune to crowd control effects, which is pretty nice. And yeah, he's just a nice little bruiserish kind of unit in the front that you could run. So you could pair him up with pretty much anything. As you can see here, we're pairing him up with a bunch of legendaries and some tanks. So one other unit that's kind of useful for this comp is Skarner. So Skarner's optional. You don't need to play him. Like, he's not even in the team comp here. But Skarner's just like a nice generic tank unit. If you ever want to unlock him, just build a Gargoyle Stoneplate and put it on a non-tank unit, and then you unlock Skarner. So that's a pretty nice little option there because you are playing flex boards here. So you don't need to copy exactly what's on this image over here. But essentially what I like to do is play Ixtal, and then if I can get Brock, go for Brock. If not, you could pivot out into something like Freljord. Freljord runs a lot of the same units here. We have Sejuani, Braum, and Ashe, for example. And we'll go over how to play Freljord later on in this video. But essentially during stage 2, you just want to try to complete your quests. During stage 3, you're pretty weak, so try to get a Lost Streak quest. And pretty much in the entirety of the early game, do everything in your power to complete the quest. Like, that's kind of how this trait works. It doesn't really work any way else. But ideally, by stage 4 or 5, you have Brock, and at the very latest, stage 5-1. At that time, you want to build up a cash out for when you need to be strong. And an easy way to do that is, again, to use Targon units and unlocking Skarner, which is why I kind of recommend him down here. But beyond that, in the super late game, this comp is really nice to play because you just go 9, roll for 5 costs, play around Lucian or Kindred, and if you have a bunch of AP items, pick up Mbessa and let her die so that you can unlock Mel or maybe play Annie instead. So kind of depends on what items you have, but there's a lot of flexibility on this board, and the only real like static unit or like core unit is Brock. You could play literally anything else with this, so it kind of depends on what your shops are. Because again, Brock doesn't have any traits. He's just very good. But in the early game, Kiana is going to be a decent item holder for Brock, and Milio's a decent item holder for range stuff. But scrolling down here to the item section, I do have like recommended items for AD options and AP options depending on what you get. So refer to that if you have not already. This, along with everything else, is going to be available for free on bunnymuffins.lol/meta. So after the video, if you need guidance during your game, it's a nice little quick reference sheet that you can use. But let's go on into the next comp, which is going to be Arcanist Sylas. This comp is super duper fun to play, but also super duper risky because like there are games where you try to go for Sylas and you just can't get him because you can't get his unlock condition. It's very difficult to get and it's very expensive. Essentially what you want to do is get Demacia going and then get all your Demacias upgraded and then sell them because you need to sell 2-star Lux and 2-star Garen and 2-star Jarvan, which is pretty hard to do and very expensive to do. And then you need to do that while having a bunch of AP items and play Arcanist and ideally get Lux back because she's like a pretty decent Arcanist. So there's a lot of if, ands, or buts. But the good news is that once you get Sylas and if you ever get Annie, it's very easy to get to 6 Arcanists because Annie summons Tibbers, and you could also play Tibbers as another Arcanist on your team. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are going to be your 6 Arcanists that you're going to run. It's decently easy to fit because again, if you get Annie, it's really nice. The thing I don't like about Annie, and don't get me wrong, she's really, really good, but the thing I don't like about her is that 2-starring her is so big because you get Tibbers upgraded and your Annie upgraded. So 1-star versus 2-star is absolutely huge difference because you play both of them. So this comp relies around hitting 2 different conditions. So you need to get Sylas and you also want 2-star Annie in the super late game. It's kind of like hitting a 2-leg parlay if you like betting, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but when it happens, like you're gonna win big, you know? But items for this comp are pretty interesting. Like for Annie, I like maxing out on mana items. Tibbers gets any of the generic tank items, and then Sylas gets the generic AP frontline items. So that's gonna be like Jeweled Gauntlet, Hand of Justice, Edge of Night's pretty good. If you get Zonia's, like more power to you, but we can only get so lucky. But we could check out on the Explorer here. We could go to 6 Arcanists, go to Champions, put in, let's do Annie, let's do Sylas as well. And then go to the items down here. You'll see that Annie really likes the mana items like Shojin, Blue Buff, like Adaptive, all performing super duper duper well. Sylas likes the Jeweled Gauntlet, Hand of Justice combo. Third item, it could be like maybe more healing or survivability, but Edge of Night, probably one of my favorites just because it guarantees that he lives, even though the stats it gives are kind of bad. But honestly, like you're looking at the average placement stats here, right? Like they don't really change that much because with legendaries, you just want them to have items. Doesn't really matter what they are. But Sylas is really, really, really powerful, mainly because he costs a lot. And yeah, he kind of has to be. So you have to kind of get lucky to get that. How do you get lucky? Well, you need to think about augments. You need lots of money and you need augments that help you get 2-star Lux and 2-star Garen in order to sell them. And you want to be playing Demacia early. Well, you don't have to play Demacia early. You could actually play from Arcanist or from Yordles into this build, but you just need to at least hold on to some of the Demacia units such as Jarvan in the early game in order to meet his unlock condition later on. But good item holders for this comp at the start of the game are going to be Teemo, LeBlanc, and Ahri. These can pretty much use whatever you're building, and also it kind of guides you into this comp pretty decently. But you don't have to play Yordles. You could literally just play any strong board and just try to save HP in the early game. Like if you win streak, play around that. If you're lose streaking, try to have as much econ as possible so you could spike as soon as possible. If you're low health, you definitely have to roll down on 4-2 and just pray that you find everything. If not, you could be a bit more patient and find things a bit later, or play 8 Yordle for like super value throughout stage 4 if you have a lot of health. But in stage 5, go level 9, roll for Sylas 2, Annie 2, and prioritize 2 mana items on Annie, tank items on Tibbers, and then whatever you can get on Sylas. One thing to note, it's very difficult to play this comp without Annie. She just does too much for your team. So it's kind of like the parlay thing I was talking about before. Like you need to just hit both her and Sylas in order for this comp to work. And it can be risky. So if you don't see the angle for this, don't play this comp. Go a different ability powered comp. Speaking of ability power, we do have this Mel comp, Mel Fast 9 up next. This one's a little easier to unlock because you just need Mbessa that dies. You can see that down here. We need to unlock LeBlanc, Darius, and Mel. LeBlanc, you just need to field 2 item Sion, and she's a really good AP item holder early on, and if you ever get Sion, it's super easy to unlock. For Darius, you need to cash out 1 gold with Draven. A little RNG-ish, like sometimes I get it super early, sometimes I get it a little bit later than I would like, but you don't need him, so that's really good. But he does help. He's like a luxury unlock, as we like to say, but it helps you get to the middle tier Noxus thresholds, and obviously that's good in certain situations. But lastly, Mel has to have one item Mbessa die in combat. Mel is very strong. It is worth rolling aggressively to find Mbessa 2 on 4-2, as she will be very contested. By the way, in case you don't remember all the unlock conditions, you could always check it out in game, but it's also on the website, teamfight.lol. There's this little unlockable section down here, so you can kind of check out how to get to everything. So if we click on Mel, you'll see have 2-star Mbessa with one item die. But let's look at the rest of the comp. Mel is a Noxian and a Disruptor, so pretty easy to pair there. You kind of do this bronze for lifey type of build, as with most Fast 9s, because you're just trying to play strong units. But Seraphine's going to be your other Disruptor. She could hold utility items such as Morello and Void Staff. Mel likes double mana item plus Rabadons. Lucian can go the AD caster build, like classic build there. We've seen this build a lot on a bunch of different champions throughout all of TFT. Swain main tank, Protector's Vow going to be the best item on him because he is the AoE CC unit of the set. Shyvana and Fiddlesticks, put whatever you have left over onto them. Mbessa, ironically, doesn't really need items. I guess if you have them and she's 2-star, like sure, use her. But you'd rather have the items on the legendaries later on in the game. But Shyvana's good for Juggernaut for this team. Fiddlesticks is good because he's a Vanquisher, so is Mbessa. So it's just like pretty logical add-ons to make. You could always make these decisions in-game. But obviously having like a template to work off of helps a lot more. But yeah, that's pretty much what this build's about. There are some pretty good tips down here. I like having reinforcement a lot whenever I play this because it guarantees Mbessa 2, so you just get your Mel really, really early. Not getting Mbessa 2 is like so bad, so if you have double econ, it really helps this comp out a lot if you don't get reinforcement. And Adaptive Helm is by far Mel's best item because her mana drain is multiplied by the Adaptive Helm. I mean, we could just look at it right here, like Adaptive Helm. Look at the build rate and like the average placement. It's both the most built item and like one of the highest performing ones, which is absolutely crazy, right? That rarely happens. Normally, if you're most built, you average out, so there's some like random items that just happen to do really, really well. But for Mel, it's like, yeah, adaptive is that good. But yeah, another thing to mention is that the board is pretty flexible. You don't need Seraphine Vi, you don't need Noxious, so you can kind of drop them for legendary soup, as some people like to say. Next comp up we have is Ixtal Bard Reroll. This comp's super fun. So let's talk about Bard's unlock condition first because it's really weird. So Bard, you need to roll 4 times before stage 2-4. This could be any reroll. So it's best done with having a econ augment that provides rerolls. So if you have like Prismatic Ticket or like Trade Sector giving you a ton of free rerolls, that's going to be the best way to do it. It's not always going to happen, but that's what you want. But this is going to be a 2-cost reroll comp. Is this the first reroll comp we're covering so far? I think it is. All the other ones were Fast 9s, right? So in this build, you want to play around Bard and Orianna and Nico. Those are going to be your 3 main characters, Bard and Nico being your main damage dealer and main tank, and then Orianna being the support. You could 3-star Vi if you want. She's not that important, but if you get her and you have a ton of gold, sure, why not? And then later on in the game, you could play around Milio if you have enough gold to play around that. But with Ixtal, you want to follow the same Ixtal rules we talked about before, but this time we're going to be playing around Bard. So we're going to be rolling a bunch early. And you need 3 Ixtal by latest 3-2, but ideally on like stage 2-1 or 2-3. Other things you need to make this comp work is 2 sets of AP items for either Milio, Nidalee, or Orianna, and obviously Bard, and also a strong frontline item for Nico. So after that, like econ augments are preferred, specifically the reroll augments. You know how when I say econ, I'm normally talking about XP. For this one, you need reroll ones. Those help out a lot more or are just more valuable. So if you think about econ, there's 3 types of econ. There's gold, experience, and rerolls. So gold is the worst out of all 3 because it just gives the least amount of value. The advantage of gold is that it's flexible. You could do either rerolling or leveling when you get gold. When you get purely XP, that's best for only XP plays. And when you get only rerolls, that's best for obviously rerolling. So since we're playing a reroll comp, we want rerolls assuming the game is balanced. But to play this comp, you need to unlock Bard by rolling early. You need to field 3 Piltover in order to get Orianna. And in order to do that, you want to do this around Krugs if possible. But most of the time, you won't have Loris until stage 3-2, so you could play like 3 Piltover plus Bard for 1 turn in order to unlock Orianna later on, like during one of the PvP fights. But just be careful not to grief your Ixtal quest, whatever it is. Lastly, for Nidalee, you need to play 2 2-star Nikos to unlock Nidalee, so make sure you complete that when you can. You'll get it naturally as you're rolling. And lastly, like Skarner's pretty useful, so put Gargoyle Stoneplate on Vi. Vi is like a great unit for that in order to unlock Skarner. But try to unlock Bard on stage 2-3 and try to get a 5 loss early on. That way you can get a lot of free rerolls from Bard and also get item priority because you do need very specific items for this team comp. mainly a lot of tiers and AP. In general, you want to prioritize your quests, but sometimes during stage 3, you don't mind winning, so you can play to win during stage 3 if your quest allows it. All you have to do is roll aggressively on stage 3-2 to find an upgraded board, and also unlock Oriana. And starting from stage 3-3, it's pretty important to be decently strong because player damage has been increased during this stage. After that, you want to just slow roll for 3 stars, unlock everything that you can get, such as Nidalee and Skarner. And then once you get stuff 3 stars, such as Nico and Bard, go level 7, play 5 Ixtal, and go from there. That should help you out throughout most of the game, like stage 1 through 4 and parts of stage 5. In the super duper duper late game, you should have Brock unlocked, so you could play him, and he's obviously really strong. We talked about him before already. But you could also like replace some of the low cost units, or maybe some of the units that never made it to 3-star, with high value units such as like Taric or Swain. Also, like, you don't need Qiyana late in the game, so you could also take her out too. But pretty much this comp just abuses how strong Bard is. He gives you a ton of econ resources whenever a round happens or a round ends. And one other thing to do is, you might be wondering, like, what's the best way to unlock Bard? The best way to unlock Bard is to roll on stage 2-3. That way you naturally leveled up to level 4 right before that, and then you use your rolls there. You have a chance of seeing Milio, and that helps you get the 3 Ixtal unlocked ASAP. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but it does happen pretty often. But that's going to be it for the S tier comps. Don't get too addicted to the S tier comps. Like, if you play them too much, you'll have too much fun, and then you'll try to go for these like Exodia conditions sometimes a little bit too often, because your brain's going to be craving that LP. And yeah, like, you got to be careful with these S tier comps, because sometimes I'd say a mistake people make right now is going for them too often when their unlock conditions just aren't realistic based on your start in that game. But yeah, just be careful. But let's go into the A tiers. A tiers are still very solid because the S tiers are kind of like hitting home runs. But this one's going to be Gunslinger T-Hex. This one is more of like a toned down build. I don't mean that in a bad way, by the way, but I just mean it's a bit more consistent in my opinion, because in this comp, you just want to play Piltover and field 9-star levels in Piltover to unlock T-Hex. It's a lot easier to do. It's kind of like playing a vertical comp. Vertical meaning you go deep into a trait. And while it's not the easiest thing in the world, it definitely is easier than, in my opinion, than unlocking Sylas. The one tricky part about unlocking T-Hex, though, is that you do need to hold some like really low-cost units in your bench the entire game, and that kind of griefs your econ at certain points. So keep that in mind whenever you're playing this. The econ levels you should be at generally aren't like what they normally are, but you want to try to complete T-Hex by stage 4-7 if possible. Because if not, when you're playing like 5 Piltover later on in the game in stage 5, you're just going to take too much damage and kind of die out because of that. But the way to unlock everything is for Oriana, you just field 3 Piltover, same as the Bard Ixtal comp. Graves, you need Twisted Fate with 2 items. And then lastly, Fizz is useful to unlock too. He's not pictured here, but you want to field Fizz for 5 Bilgewater on level 7 so that you could get Misfortune pretty easily. And you could get Bilgewater items for your Misfortune. But Bilgewater is a pretty popular way to play this comp, especially in the early and mid game. So it either provides more econ or more items or just more units to kind of save your econ. And Graves 3 is something that can just randomly happen, which definitely does help you out a bunch because his traits just happen to match up with the rest of your team really, really, really well. Also, when you play T-Hex, he eats someone, and when you 3-star Graves, you could always eat the Graves. And because he has a lot of stats, you get like a bigger bonus when you eat. Or I guess it's not eating, it's like piloting the T-Hex, but both terms work. If you want to like super min-max this comp, by the way, there's a thing for Bilgewater called like toggling. I don't know if it's kosher, I'll be honest with you, but I have heard people doing it a ton. I haven't actually tried it myself yet. I've only seen other people do it. I haven't had a good game for Bilgewater yet, but probably tomorrow after I release this video, I'll probably give it a try. But there are ways to like do APM practice with this game. And if you toggle 7 Bilge in and out, you can potentially see stronger items on your turn. Nothing too important there. For 99.9% of people, it probably doesn't matter. We're not trying to win like the TFT championships in the first day of the set, right? But if you do want to cheese a bit, it is something that is available. But essentially, the comp is just a 4 Gunslinger, 4 Warden comp. You can mix and match the tanks up a bit. What I love about Warden in this set is that you don't need to meet thresholds, so you can just play whoever you have, and if you don't have them, you can play something else, such as like a random 4 cost or a legendary. But I'd say 4 Gunslinger is pretty good to play around with. Next comp up we have is going to be AD Fast 9. So this is another Fast 9 build, but it's focused around attack damage items. So if you ever get like a good win streak attack damage item opener, like you slammed Infinity Edge early, or maybe you like slammed a Shojin and you want to flex into this, or maybe you did Rageblade start and you have like half a Kraken to kind of pick up on Carousel later, this is one of the things you can consider going. Your late game bombs are going to be either Kindred or Lucian. Obviously both works out best, but itemize whoever you 2-star. And you could also play Ixtal early on in order to get here. Like pretty much you just need a lot of econ or just be win streaking for most of the game. That way you could save a lot of HP and be healthy in order to take losses when you greed in stage 4. But one other thing to keep in mind is if you want to play no unlock TFT, this is a comp that has 0 unlocks, so that's pretty cool. But I think the best way to play this build in terms of augments is to pick like a item augment in stage 2. That way you could use it to win streak, and then in stage 3 you take an econ in order to get to level 9 later on. And then stage 4 augment doesn't really matter too much, but if you get like combat augment or another econ augment, I'd say that those two are both fine. Combat's good because it just makes you stronger, right? Like combat's always the best in stage 4. And then econ is good if you like kind of griefed your econ earlier on and you need to fix it in order to get to level 9. That's kind of when you would take the econ. But the good news about this comp is that there are a lot of playable 5 costs that you could use to support this build. You by no means are locked into this. Like you could obviously play Taric, Swain, like random tanks there. If you play Swain, you obviously want to pair it with Shyvana because they're both juggernauts. But like there are a lot of random like traits here that you could kind of pair up with them. Or if you just hit random 2-star legendaries, like they're all very playable, right? Like that's the whole point of Fast 9. You're not locked into a very specific build. You're kind of just using everything that is available to you, whatever you hit in your shops. But one thing I like to do is play like the 3 Freljord kind of package there because it gives you quick shot with Kindred and Ashe, and it also gives you 2 tank options with Braum and Sejuani to pair up with. This gives you both Warden and Defender, so you could pair a lot of different stuff with these 2 units. Next build up we have is going to be Freljord Flex. This one is going to be either AD or AP. There are 2 different options there. I personally like the AP version more. I'm more of like a classic TFT player where I like playing around 4 costs, so getting like 2-star Lissandra, 2-star Braum, iteming them up, going for as many of their traits as possible. In this case, it's Freljord, supporting them with like random legendaries that hit late game. Like that's kind of how I like to play TFT, so I prefer the AP version a bit more. But AD is also good too. Like obviously Lissandra is still doing a ton of work, but this one focuses more around the legendary units. But it really just depends what items you get. Also, item augments are really good in this build. So if you ever get like buried treasures or anything that gives you a ton of items, you have a lot of people to itemize. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 in both builds, Braum, Lissandra, Volibear, plus either Kindred or Zilean. And they're just pretty powerful things to play. The best part about this comp is that there aren't any crazy requirements that you kind of need to meet. Some of the other ones we went over so far, you do need crazy requirements, but if you just need to default to something, like this one is pretty good to default to. You really just need items and some tempo. That's really all you need. And if you have items, like it's pretty easy to get tempo if you took item augments early. The only tricky thing is that you need to unlock Volibear. You could either do that with like a bunch of bruisers or by having Warmogs. So try to get belts if you can. If you're in like a tiebreaker between belt or chain or belt and Negatron, try to go for the belt on Carousel if you are last pick. In terms of like min-maxing the placement of the frozen towers, I kind of like giving my Volibear the tank buff right now. That's why he's in the 2nd row. I haven't tried placing him in the 3rd row where he gets a damage amp. I'm sure it's fine. Maybe it just depends on what build you have. If you have like too much tankiness, like maybe you want to give him some more damage, like give him the damage amp, or maybe you have like a ton of tanks up front. Like who knows, maybe you have like crash test tummies and then you have like too many tanks, right? Then like, yeah, sure. Damage amp your Volibear. But for the most part, I've been putting him in on 2nd row. And then for left, right, frozen towers, like I just put one on the left, one on the right. I don't really think it makes that much of a difference, but it does make like swapping a little bit trickier if you want to do like a massive swap. But if you want, you could move your frozen tower like one to the right. That way you could put your Lissandra in either corner. It doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, pretty simple build to play. It's just classic 4-cost Fast 8 TFT with the option to go level 9 with some bombs there to end in the late game. Nothing really too complicated there. Depending on what items you get, you go for either Kindred or Zilean. And the build's like pretty much the same. Next build up we have is going to be the Yunara Flex build. There's a Freljord and Ionia build. If you haven't noticed yet, I do like the Freljord base a lot. Like I feel like their units just fit in so many different types of comps. But in this one here, we are playing around Braum and Yunara in the level 8, and then Volibear and Kindred in level 9. In the Ionia build, you're playing around Yunara and Wukong, and then Set and Kindred in the late game. So Yunara is a quick striker, so you want to pair him up with Ashe and Kindred in the later parts of the game, but she's pretty much just like a attack marksman, so you just want to do the Rageblade Kraken Slayer combo. We can kind of just take a look here. Yeah, Rageblade, IE, Kraken Slayer. It's like the pretty standard build for attack speed. Like Deathblade probably pretty solid too, because Deathblade plus Rageblade has always been a good combo. But if you ever built Rageblade early, this is when you would consider going for Yunara, because Rageblade is a pretty good early game item still. Like it always has been, just because the fights in Stage 2 allow you to stack up pretty nicely. But you might be wondering, when do you want to go Ionia? When do you want to go Freljord? Well, obviously, based on your units in the early game, that might help dictate that. But past that, one thing I like to do is, if you ever get the Econ Ionia path, Ionia is pretty nice to play, just because it allows you to get more gold and play out your board that much easier. That way you can hit level 9 with a bit more gold in the later parts of the game, and then cap out with a bunch of the different legendaries we see here. In terms of unlockables, we don't really need to unlock that much. Kennen is optional. He's good in the mid game, and you can use him in a bunch of different ways, especially if you go for the Ionia route. Volibear is obviously good in the Freljord build, because he's just the best Freljord to play around. He gives Bruiser with Wukong, which is really nice, and Set is also really important, but Set's really easy to do. The way to unlock Set is, I think it's level 8. It's either 8 or 9. I think it's level 8. But you need to play him and field only one unit in the front 2 rows of your board for that turn. And yeah, then you get a 5 cost. It's like really easy to unlock, so just back row all your units and then put someone in the front row. It's definitely level 8, by the way. You could still win the round, by the way. Like, you're not guaranteed to lose the round when you grief your positioning. But let's say you lose. Oh no, you get a 5 cost in the next turn, and yeah, you get to play around with him after that. And obviously he is going to be Ionian. Yunara is also Ionian. And then it's pretty easy to fit 3 or 5 Ionia after that. You don't have to play any of the garbage units. One thing to note about Set is that he doesn't really have like a secondary trait or a class. He's just Ionian, and he has his own like unique the boss thing. So you don't really need to be a trait bot to kind of help him out after that. But yeah, this comp is very flexible. You can play either 2 Quick Striker or 3. Freljord can go into everything. Investing in Set is pretty nice if you stay in Ionia. And obviously we have this entire like how to play section down here with like game plan at every parts of the game, along with a bunch of tips. Oh, one fun fact, like it sounds weird, but like Belt Overflow is pretty good for this comp, because Yunara and Kindred are stacking with Rageblade in the backline. So having a lot of tank items is pretty good in this comp, because you just stack your Rageblade. But it also helps you unlock Volibear, which is sometimes difficult to do. But if you have Belt Overflow, you get like 4 belts, I think it gives now, instead of 5. They change it up a little bit. You could definitely just slam a Warmogs and sometimes 2, or just build like Sunfire Cape or whatever, and get access to Volibear pretty easily like that. So fun little thing there. I wouldn't say it's like best in slot or anything. Okay, maybe I did, but it's definitely very interesting, because it gives you everything you need, and it's also just like a decent augment on its own. Next up we have is Bel'Veth Slayers. This one is going to be a build that you could play in a lot of different ways depending on what you get in the early game. Obviously, if you get any of the Darken stuff, you could go for Darken builds, which obviously revolve a lot around Slayers. It definitely makes this comp like S tier. And strangely enough, like the best item in this comp is going to be a Quicksilver. So Quicksilver is very important, and you never hear this where you're like, yeah, the best item is Quicksilver. Like, we haven't built Quicksilver in so long, right? But Quicksilver is actually pretty good in this set, because when you play this build, you just need to not stop attacking. And an item that allows you to do that is Quicksilver. And Bel'Veth has 2 range, I believe, and she's able to not need any other survivability item. Quicksilver also gives attack speed, so she just goes absolute monster mode to kind of tear through everything. But let's talk about the unlocks for this comp first. So we have Mel. Mel we talked about before. You just need 2-star Mbessa with an item, and if she dies, you get to unlock Mel. She's a good support unit in this build. Just to apply Morello, and also just be like one of those leftover legendaries that you kind of play around with. It's also easy to splash in Vanquisher, because Gangplank is both a Slayer and Vanquisher. So that's why playing Mbessa kind of makes sense, because it also gives you Noxus. Next unlock we want to talk about is Aatrox. He's obviously the star of the show. You need to field a unit with 40% Omnivamp and be at level 8. So this is done very easily by making 2 Bloodthirsters, or building like double Hand of Justice and have 4 Slayers, or have like BT and Hand of Justice plus 4 Slayers. The only way to unlock this if you have 1 Bloodthirster is if you have 6 Slayers, which is a little bit difficult to get, and sometimes you might grief a few rounds, because I don't think 6 Slayers is that great, because you have to run a bunch of trash units without items. So try to build 2 BTs if you can. If not, like BT and Hodge or double Hodge is going to be fine there. Lastly, we have Tryndamere as an optional unlock, but he's good for the early game. Essentially, you just have to play Ashe with 2 items. Only do this if you need 6 Slayer to unlock Aatrox. If not, do not unlock Tryndamere, because you don't end up needing him on your end board. Lastly, if you ever get Rift Herald, which is gotten by playing Void for 8-player combats, we'll go into a vertical Void comp later on. Sometimes you can play Void with the Bel'Veth, and if you get a damage enhancement or mutation on your Void, it's worth playing around because you could put it on Bel'Veth and she'll go even more ham than she already does, and then you just play Rift Herald plus another Void unit, and then play a bunch of random strong crap after that. But early game is pretty straightforward. If you get the Darken item, get Darken Bow. It's absolutely incredible. It's going to make Bel'Veth go absolutely crazy. But in the early game, you want to prioritize both Quicksilver and Bloodthirsters. So don't build Hand of Justice if you don't have Quicksilver yet, because you oftentimes need the glove for the Quicksilver. But if you ever get 2 gloves, I guess you could build both. But yeah, just prioritize building the healing items plus Quicksilver and any of the other Bel'Veth items you see here. There's nothing really too complicated there. After that, you want to prepare for a fast 8 roll down. That way you can get the Mbessa, the Bel'Veth, and the Swain. And also, once you reach level 8 and you have the 2 healing items, you should be able to unlock Aatrox like almost instantly and get like a very juicy power spike from there. But yeah, pretty simple comp to play. It's just a little item dependent. That's like the knock I have on this. But you could obviously play this with a lot of different stuff. The core is really just 4 Slayer. The rest of the units can be pretty much any combination of anything. Next build up we have is going to be the Shadow Isle Kalista build. This build is super duper fun because I love playing like pretty much any Shadow Isle build. They're like deep Shadow Isle builds. This is more of like a shallow one where you're only going 3 Shadow Isle. But if you ever get early Viego, like Viego on stage 2-2, like Viego 2 on stage 2-2, you're able to get like a lot of the Shadow Isle unlocks at like pretty good intervals. And you could use that just to play out your early game. So Viego 2-star plus ideally an item gets you Yorick. Then you collect souls for Gwen, Kalista, and Thresh. You don't really have to worry too much about getting perfect unlocks because as you just play the game, you'll get Shadow Owl like stacks and those souls will eventually unlock everyone else. But me personally, I would only play this comp if I get early 2-star Viego and ideally an item, and then pair him with a quick striker such as like Twist of Fate, and then play as many Shadow Owl units as you can. So stage 2 and 3 are very easy when you play this comp. The only tricky part is when you get to stage 4, you want to be rolling aggressively for Kalista 2 and Mbessa 2. And pretty much everyone's going for Mbessa right now because Mel is just so strong. But obviously we want the Kalista. If you have her unlocked already, it's pretty easy to find her 2-star. But the earlier you roll, the better because it helps you unlock Mbessa that much earlier. And it denies her from other people. And it also gives you access to Mel. And Mel absolutely carries. You will eventually unlock Thresh. He gets unlocked at stage 5-3. So after that happens, go level 9. And then roll for legendaries and then slowly replace your crappy Shadow Owl units. So normally in the game, you're running like all the Shadow Owls. Who are they? Like Viego and Yorick. And you could eventually get rid of them because like, yeah, you're playing 5 Shadow Owl earlier on, getting more stacks and souls and buffing up your units. But you won't have these items, right? Or like these units. And then eventually, once you find those upgraded units or like more expensive units, you just simply drop them and then go on your merry way. You don't have to worry about too much after that. Then fill in traits like Gwen's a disruptor. Guess who's also a disruptor? You got it. Mel's also a disruptor. So that's why we kind of play the Mbessa with this build. Who's a vanquisher? Kalista. Who else is a vanquisher? Mbessa. So it's like a perfect pair for this build because you get like 2, 4, and 5 cost units and they complement 2 of your traits like absolutely perfectly. Thresh is a warden. I wouldn't worry too much about warden. It doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, you could play him if you want. Well, obviously play Thresh, but I mean like you could play additional wardens if you want. That's what we kind of have on this board here, but it's not like mandatory. You can kind of replace them with a bunch of different things too if you really want to. But yeah, very straightforward comp to play. You just need the Viego early and then just play him, slam items on him. What some people do is they build like Rageblade on him and then they YOLO the Reforger on him. You could decide to do that. You could also just build Kalista items on him or just whatever you have and then just be a little bit weaker in the early game and then you don't have to YOLO the Reforger, but it really doesn't matter which one you choose. I think both options are like pretty viable. It obviously depends on what items you get. Next build up we have is GP Reroll. Gangplank is back, GP Reroll is back. This is a little different from last set. I know people love playing that comp from last set, but this one's going to be another Slayer build. You want to play it around with Aatrox. Obviously, like Darken is really good. This time you want Darken Scythe. That definitely boosts this comp up another tier. But it's another variation of 4 Slayer. Instead of Bel'Veth, you're playing around Gangplank. You might be asking yourself, when would I play Gangplank instead of Bel'Veth? Well, if you have no reroll angle, then obviously you go Bel'Veth. If you do have a reroll angle, go for Gangplank. So if you have like 4 copies of Gangplank sitting around, you're picking your next augment and you're like, oh, this one helps me get a bunch of rerolls, then yeah, maybe go for the Gangplank. 3-star him. He pairs up with both Slayers and Vanquishers, and yeah, he gets pretty decent after that. Aatrox is going to be your late game, and then Swain, tank, nothing too crazy going on here. There are a bunch of flex units you can add, because as with all like 4 Slayer builds, like you really just care about the 4 Slayers. I guess in this one you do care about having at least 2 Vanquishers though, but there are a bunch of flex units. We have like Taric there. He could obviously be anything you want. I will say though that the early game with this comp is a bit tricky. You want to play around Bilgewater because obviously you could get a lot of free copies of Gangplank. So what you want to do is if you get an early Graves, that's another sign to kind of go for this. Because with with Twist of Fate, you can put 2 items on Twist of Fate and then unlock Graves and then unlock a bunch of the Bilgewaters really, really quickly. And then obviously buy Gangplanks in the black market shop. You could also find duplicators there, copies of Gangplank, and ironically, I know I called this like a reroll comp, but you don't need to actually roll that much because of Bilgewater. I'd say the reroll augment stuff I was talking about earlier before, it does help if you're going for like other rerolls as well. There is a version of this build, I need to add it in like the second image there, where you can go for both Gangplank 3 and Nautilus 3, and sometimes you just don't get the champions in your black market shop, and then you have to do it the old-fashioned way. So it kind of depends on what your board state is. Another thing you need to do with this comp is I would say you want to roll pretty aggressively in stage 3. If you have GP pair on 3-2 or 3-5, just roll at least like 10 gold if you don't see like the last copy in your Bilgewater shop, because you can also find 5 Bilgewater during that time. And GP 2-star definitely stabilizes your stage 3 really, really hard. And as I talked about before, damage in stage 3 is 1 damage higher now, so it definitely is more important to win those rounds. If you want to min-max a bit, when you are looking at your Bilgewater shop, go down to 3 Bilgewater when you have 5. So just bench 2 of your Bilgewater units because you can see more units that way because you really just care about the units. Next build up we have is the 9 Void Kaisa. I really love the Void builds. It's just really fun going deep into Void or deep into a trait, and all the unlocks they like are pretty easy to get and they're pretty straightforward. You don't have to do anything crazy, which means that you get uncontested units pretty often. So that's what I really like about this build. There are a couple of other Kaisa players out there. There are Kaisa Flex builds, but going deep into a trait is always super duper duper fun, and Baron Nashor absolutely smacks. If you ever get best in slot items for him, or even like a Radiant, that'd be absolutely amazing because you're concentrating so much power onto one unit because he takes up 2 item slots. So here we have Kaisa. Kaisa is a bit different in this set. She has an AP version and an AD version. So for AP, she's like an attack speed AP champion. And then for AD, she's like an AD caster. So both builds require different itemization. So you want the Rage Blade for the AP version, then some AP. For the attack damage version, you want Shojin plus Infinity Edge. Third item doesn't really matter too much. But I like how they kind of added that to this unit because you can pretty much play her from any start. You could pivot into her pretty easily, and you don't get item screwed because if you get a certain direction of items, you could be like, oh, let me go for that instead. Rift Herald is going to be your main tank. He's very solid, just standard tank items on him, nothing too complicated there. Bel'Veth, you don't really itemize her in this version, but I guess if you have a Thieves Glove, she could kind of use it. The main star of the show is going to be this Baron Nashor in the super late game. Sterix is so good on him because he gets so much health, and Sterix is based off of your max health. So you just get a giant shield from this one item. It's absolutely bonkers busted. I actually didn't even data check this, but let's do it right now. Like, you don't always need data for everything, but since we're here, we might as well check it out. Teamfight.lol, go to the Explorer tool under Stats. What are Baron Nashor's best items? Let's check it out. So we have the Bloodthirster. Yeah, makes sense. Where's Sterix? Okay, Sterix is right next to him underneath there, so that's 2.07. Like, all the items are like pretty close. Like, are there really any quote-unquote bad items? I guess you don't want to build no items. That'd be pretty bad. You also don't want Rage Blade, don't want Thieves Gloves. Like, yeah, you want like real items on him. I'm surprised like tank items aren't really here that much. I have seen people build tank on Baron. Like, obviously, like the damage version is better. I guess tank does pretty badly, but yeah, damage is the best. But I thought he was one of those units, kind of like Braum from last set, where you could kind of go either or, like tank or damage, and he kind of just works with anything. But you pretty much want the bruiser items on him. Like, I didn't data check this before, but now I did, and yeah, he's pretty good with anything that melee damage dealers normally use. So if you have like any of the Slayer units, like what's good on Slayers, like they're probably going to be good on the Baron Nashor unit. But let's talk about the unlocks. So Rift Herald's pretty easy. You just need to field Void for 8-player combat. So if you get Void early, he's really easy to get and very strong. Obviously, you could get him in stage 3 if you get Void super duper early, and yeah, he auto wins those rounds. Kai'Sa's a little trickier. You need to field 3 items on a longshot unit and be level 8. Pretty easy to do because Kog'Maw is a longshot and also a void, so you're going to be playing him anyways. You just item remove him and then swap the items over onto Kai'Sa. You could also use Teemo if you use Teemo as an item holder, or Caitlyn, because obviously like Kog'Maw plus Teemo or Caitlyn makes a lot of sense. They're all long shots. The only actually difficult unlock to get is Baron Nashor. You need to field 7 unique void units, so you also need to reach level 10. And you need a lot of econ to do that. So the way to play this build is to win streak with void early, or have like super duper econ and preserve health like semi, and then you could also get to level 10 that way. So 2 paths to the same destination. It just depends how your early game goes. If you have like a win streak early game, obviously play for that. It's always ideal to do that. But if not, you could play for econ and then try to take like good losses throughout stage 3 and 4. But once you get Baron, he will be powerful. Just make sure you have items on him. I just use Bel'Veth as an item holder and then item swap the items over onto Baron Nashor later on. But this comp is super easy to play. Oh, and by the way, Baron is immune to CC, so you don't need Quicksilver or Titans. I'm sure Titans is fine, right? It's still 2.09, so Titans is still good, but you don't need it on him for the effect where you get immunity to crowd control once you reach max stacks. But pretty much like Bel'Veth can use almost anything that Nashor likes. Oh, by the way, the best augment in this comp is going to be Win Out. That's the one where you reach level 10 immediately upon reaching level 9. It's incredibly good because you need level 10 to unlock Baron, and it just automatically gives you that. So definitely go for that if you can. And another shout out to Reinforcement. Reinforcement is good because you could get Kai'Sa 2-star in 1 click and use that to get to level 10 even easier. Yeah, if you haven't noticed yet, econ augments are pretty good in this set so far, just because reaching the higher levels really helps out a ton. Now let's go into the B tier. We're going to skim over most of these. The first one we're going to go over is Bard Sion reroll. So Bard doesn't really need traits because he's just his own guy. So that just means you throw in a ton of tanks in front of him, put an Archangel on him, pray that he stacks, and then ideally he kills a lot of stuff. You could also play Targons with them because Targons also don't really care too much about traits, so Aphelios is pretty nice to pair with him. He's also a 2-cost, so you could roll for Sion 3, Bard 3, and Aphelios 3. And with Bard, it's nice because if you lose, you get a bunch of rerolls, so it's pretty easy to play him there. You just do 2-cost reroll. You just need to unlock Bard, roll 4 times before stage 2 Carousel. Kabuko, that's the one where you need to field 6 star levels in Bruisers, Yordles, or Invokers. Pretty easy because you're running a lot of Bruisers. And then Volibear's pretty nice because he's a legendary Bruiser, and you just get him by running a lot of HP, which is really easy to do because you have 6 Bruiser. Like, you don't even need to try to unlock him. But yeah, just build Rageblade and Archangels in the backline, pray that they stack up, and maybe this comp wins. Next build up we have is Targon Aurelion Sol. I love Targon so much. Like, I want to make the Targon builds work. There are 2 Targon builds we're going to go over, Double Trouble Targon and this one. And it's hilarious because they both have like no traits, but they kind of work in the same way. Like, you run a bunch of the Targon tanks, there are a lot of them, and then you build stacking items in the back, and then ideally it kind of works out. But yeah, the condition to this comp is be very rich and also unlock everything. Diana, you need to field Leona 2 with 3 items at level 6. The sooner you complete this, the better, because you get Ixtal quicker. There are crazy early unlocks with Diana where you can kind of smurf on people. Ixtal, field every other Targon unit. Unlocking Diana is the first priority, and then Ixtal is right after that, followed by getting Taric, and then once you get that, you can get Ixtal. And the sooner you get Ixtal, the faster he scales, as his first few turns are super duper weak, so you need to unlock him as soon as possible. So essentially, the way Ixtal works is that as he gets more stacks, he does crazier and crazier stuff. He could get up to like 2,000 stacks and do something absolutely bonkers nuts, or like 700. I don't know how far down this thing goes. I haven't gotten that far. I forget what my furthest is, but it definitely wasn't the auto win one. But you pretty much just need him to cast a lot, play a lot of frontliners, and play all the threat units. Like Fiddlesticks is also, he's not a Targon, but he's considered like a threat unit, right? Because like he doesn't really have any traits. I guess he has Vanquisher, but he's just a generic legendary that you can kind of run here. But yeah, just try to get your Ixtal to cast as much as possible, and he should be good to go. This is the Double Trouble Targon. This revolves around 3-star Zoe. Pretty fun to play. You can play 2 Leonas, like 3-star Zoe, 3-star Leona, and then play all the other Targon units except for Aurelion Sol. So you could go like Diana and Taric and just play 4 of these units times 2 equals 8. And yeah, they should be doing pretty well. One fun augment to try with Double Trouble is Binary Airdrop. I haven't actually gotten this combo yet, but it probably is going to work out pretty nicely because when you have Double Trouble, all your units become strong. And what do you want on strong units? Obviously items, and that's one way to kind of get them there. But yeah, this is going to be the B tiers. And the C tier, I have Singed Seraphine right now. Like Singed, let's do a casual data check on him. We'll go to Champions. And then who's at the bottom? Okay, there's like 4 costs at the bottom, 4.73. That's pretty bad. Like you don't want to be a 4 cost below 4 point like 6 or 7. That's pretty bad. 4.5 is okay, but like yeah, once you get down there when you're like hanging out with the 1 and 2 cost units, like that's not where 4 costs are supposed to be, right? So this comp has seen better days, but maybe it'll be back in action later on. I will be updating the tier list pretty much every day. So if they do a B patch, if they do this, do that, like maybe some random new comp gets invented in like Mars or something like that, like there's always new regions to explore. Like I will be updating this tier list, but right now, like S tiers are home runs. Go for them if you can. If not, a lot of the A tiers are pretty solid, pretty consistent, kind of defaults that you can kind of rely on. But yeah, everything can be found on bunnymuffins.lol/meta, including like all the random stuff that I didn't talk about because it would make like a 10-hour video. So definitely check that out. Have this screen up when you are playing your games. Tell your friends about it. Tell your mom about it. Get your mom to play TFT as well. Also, if she's single, I wouldn't mind her number either. And yeah, if you have any questions, put them down into the comments below. And apart from that, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.